What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another day, another episode of The Blade Dive, presented by Prenoth. If you haven't already, go ahead and make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you can get those notifications on when those new episodes drop. It's really cool. You get a fancy ding on your phone or a buzz if it's muted to let you know that new episodes are available to listen to. Make sure you're following us on social media as well at The Blade Dive on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you are posting photos, videos, you've got projects going on, you're in the machine, you're outside or around the machine, tag us. Use the handle at The Blade Dive or the hashtag The Blade Dive. Okay, my guest today is Joshua, aka Yosh Heydorn. Josh is somebody that hails from Flagstaff, Arizona, and has worked specifically to develop programs at Snowbowl. Spending his time being around others, investing in capital projects for the resort, developing the resort's terrain park program, being a part of lift installations, snowmaking pipe installations, Josh has literally been around almost everything that you could expose yourself to at a resort level operations-wise. Pretty cool stories. We discuss what it was like building the brand of Snowbowl's terrain park program, being raised by a single mom, and his passion and love for photography, and how he gets some of his creative vibes and visions from seeing things through a different lens. Secretly, I am super excited about today's push road question of the day, and Yosh hits it right out of the park. So this one's a good one. I'm really excited about the authenticity that this man has, and so you know the deal. If you're at home right now, kick your feet up, grab a drink, and if you're in the machine, turn up the volume.
Go ahead and give it the juice. Already.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another day, another episode of The Blade Dive, and today I am joined by someone that I really think is so authentic that it's almost out of my realm, and it's humbling to be around this individual sometimes because he brings me back down to a level that I need to be at, and that is Joshua, aka Yosh Heydorn. And if you don't know Yosh, Yosh is a local to the Arizona area, specifically Snowbowl, and has not really been a stranger at all to contributing to larger resorts like Mammoth Mountain and being, right alongside folks like TJ Dawood and Matty Roan and Frank Wells with projects there. And I'm so stoked that you're on the show, Yosh, and I'm honored, man. Thanks for being on.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure, man. What's up, Blade Dive?
What is up? That is right, man. I'm excited you're on the show, and you've got this incredible story, and that's why I wanted to chat, because it's really relative, and I think a lot of people can relate to it, and you have definitely contributed to the industry in a fashion that is, just like I described, pretty real, pretty authentic, and as a human being, I just think you're one of a kind. So super grateful you're on. And I don't want to go too chronological, but I kind of want to jump into a special guest question right off the bat. You cool with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
And it's from Mr. Dean Blotto Gray himself. So here we go.
Parker, Yosh, what's good? Thanks for letting me call in a couple of questions. First one is when you're shaping the snow, there's a focus on creating a good feature that's safe, sound, and secure. But do part of your thoughts go to a place where you're thinking about what maneuvers riders will be doing, et cetera, et cetera? Second one, if you have a passenger in the cat for an extended amount of time, do they eventually get car sick? I remember riding along with a park shaper one time, and after 60 minutes or so, I was a little woozy. Let us know. Thanks again.
Oh, man, Blotto. Yeah, well, I'll answer them in non-chronological order, too, the last one being first. Absolutely, people get car sick. There's a lot of back and forth when it comes to shaping or just grooming of any freestyle terrain. And for example, but my mom actually came up and rode in the cat for the first time in like 10 years, just last week.
Oh, cool, man.
Yeah, and sure enough, after about 10 minutes on slushy, punchy snow, she's looking at me like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. So yeah, it definitely depends on the person, but and the operator, I would say, and maybe even the snow conditions and what the project is, but it definitely can happen. And then as far as his first question, where I go to or what I'm kind of thinking of as far as the riders and obviously safety and those other things being primary, definitely, I think, you know, sometimes during builds you go into kind of like a trance, and sometimes I also feel like I'm maybe riding the features with the cat and kind of imagining that. Obviously, the physics are a lot different than if you were on a snowboard or a pair of skis, but you certainly try to put yourself in the rider's perspective, and that really has a lot to do with the outcome of the feature, obviously, for sure.
Yeah, that was deep. Like, that was a really good question. So big shout out to Blotto for contributing. Yeah, man, I was honored that he was willing to be a part of this. So huge shout out. And yeah, man, that was a really cool perspective. Like, I've never thought of it that way. Like, you kind of go into a trance, like what you were saying, with whether you're viewing it from I'm in the machine for me, or I'm in the machine for my bros or my homies, or I'm in the machine with an objective to build a product for either a photo shoot or a customer, the everyday offering. So yeah, man, that was really cool. That's funny that your mom was up there with you the day. That's rad. That's so cool that she was like, hey, I'll come. What was it like? Was she just like, hey, I'll come up there and we'll hang out, we'll have lunch, or I'll pick you up at the bottom, mom, and you'll come up and hang out with me? That's rad, man.
Yeah, well, like with the pandemic with everybody, I hadn't seen her really in a really long time, and she got her vaccine or whatever, and felt comfortable spending some time together in a close setting like that. And I think the last time she was in a cat was probably really close to, me being a real rookie, real green. And I remember I was cutting a catwalk and I hit a rock, and I was actually in an ME. And,
oh, no
we
way.
hit that rock, and that cat just came to a dead stop. And she actually, you remember in the MEs and the MPs had those, like, the windows with like the latch that kind of like you would pop out like
almost like a smoke
house or an RV.
Yeah, almost like a smoker window or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So she, like, when we hit that rock, she slammed her shoulder into that like handle, and she still has like a mark in her shoulder from that like 15 years ago. So I think that might have put her off a little bit. Maybe that's why it took so long to get her back in the cat. But
oh, dude, that's heavy. Yeah, that would have put my mom off too. She's been like, yeah, that you can have that. I don't want any part of that anymore. Thank you though. Yeah, man, that's I definitely appreciated you not wanting to go chronologically there, and I was grateful that Blotto contributed. And like I said, I think it's amazing that you are, just as I described, authentic and local to the area that you are from, and what you've done there at Snowball, and how you've contributed to the local scene there, how you've helped develop the park program there, how you've helped develop yourself, morph into new things, new opportunities, and growth, and all that. And I just think that that's just an incredible story that we have to unpack. And I don't want to start from the very beginning, but I think it would be cool. So maybe let's start by kind of helping the listeners kind of understand who maybe Yosh is, Josh Heydorn. And by doing that, I think it'd be cool if you could paint a picture of your childhood and what that was like growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Big shout out to Blotto. Thanks again. That was awesome. But yeah, I grew up outside of Phoenix, Arizona. Raised by my mom, single parent, and grew up skateboarding, riding my bikes to my friends' houses, typical stuff. I hadn't seen snow since I was in the desert. It never snows down in Phoenix. Very rarely will they get a dusting. And my mom thought it would be a good idea to borrow a car that was capable of getting us to the snow in Flagstaff when I don't even know how old I was, probably around 9 or 10. And so she borrowed our neighbor's car and drove us up to Flagstaff, and we played in the snow that day and got stuck in the snow in our neighbor's car, and I was hooked. I was like, went from cactus to mountains and snow, and that kind of really stayed with me throughout high school and going through adolescence and growing up. I kind of always I wanted more of that as I was growing up.
Yeah, that's rad, man. I feel like the snow sometimes is often an outlet for so many people, whether it doesn't have to necessarily be snow, but like maybe help us understand that adventure a little bit. Like your mom was like, "Hey, neighbor, I am so stoked that you have a capable vehicle. Can I pay for the gas and we'll be up there? Is that cool? Like, can I make that happen?" What was that?
Yeah, essentially, I think that's what it was. We had a old beater car. I think it was like from 1977 or something. I was born in '85, so it was at that time like it was a pretty old vehicle. I can't remember what it was, but long, very heavy doors.
Was it like the wood grain side panel? Like, was it that kind of car?
No, it wasn't so. It wasn't so much like that. It was more like El Camino-y,
nice.
but without the truck bed in the back. Just
Gotcha.
really long and sturdy.
Fair enough. That's rad, man. How did you guys? I have to ask her, like, how did you guys get unstuck from the snow?
I think I can't quite recall, but I'm pretty sure nice man came by and pulled us out with his truck or something like that.
Very cool. And from there, you were hooked. You were going like, "Hey, I had my first day on snow. It was incredible, and it was a bit of an adventure, but I'm there. Like, I want to go back."
Yeah, I think it was just such a juxtaposition from what I was used to, in the desert, and not, as most people in Arizona, when they think about Arizona, they don't obviously associate this place with snow or mountains at all. It's, I didn't, it's cactus and dirt and rocks and snakes. It's not, 13,000 foot old volcanoes and snow and, alpine tundras and stuff, which we do actually have here. And so I think that really like just opened my eyes to, that was sort of the beginning of my path and down this industry, obviously, but just for my sense of adventure overall kind of started there for sure.
Dude, that's so rad. I feel like we all have that connection to the snow and what it was like to kind of first enjoy it and first be exposed to it. Maybe talk a little bit more about what it was like with your expansion into kind of that board sport area, whether it was skateboarding, whether it was snowboarding, or if there was another catalyst that kind of entered the scene to get you more interested in going up to the snow.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned before, I was raised by a single mother, but one thing she did when I was really young is she signed me up for what was called Valley Big Brothers Big Sisters. And basically what that is they like match you with an individual as like a mentor, essentially. And in my case, it was more of like, I wouldn't say a father figure, but like a positive male role model in my life, since I was lacking that at the time. And one of the things that his name is Kent, shout out Kent.
Shout out to Kent.
Yeah, he took me skiing. Actually, we went to a ski area in the White Mountains of Arizona called Sunrise. And I remember him. I was not a good skier. I was pretty young, but I had no idea what I was doing, obviously. And he didn't get me a lesson. I don't really recall, but I do remember him, kind of doing that classic ski with the kid in between your legs move. And I think we did that probably like 5 or 6 times, and I was having a really good time, but I think it was really wearing him out. But that really stuck with me, and definitely kind of like opened my eyes to like, oh, actually, you don't just sled and throw snowballs. There's other things you can do in the mountains, and that definitely stuck with me. And And as I got a little older and into high school, that soon became a priority. I got a job so I could pay for gas and insurance so I could drive up to Flagstaff on the weekends. I bought a season pass, with my summer job money. And that's what I did. That was really my focus throughout high school, other than, academics and my extracurricular activities at school, was going to Flagstaff. My mom was pretty trusting of me as I got older and kind of gave me enough leash to get me out there and, let me get up into the mountains, and usually with a friend, but sometimes alone, which I'm sure wasn't very easy for her to do. But it allowed me to, get that access to the mountain and really start my love affair, I would say, with snowboarding and the mountains.
I have a highlight I want to throw at you because it's kind of it's a nostalgic memory for myself, but the highlight being that when I drove across country, I've done it 10 times.
Whoa.
Yeah, so like 5 times out and 5 times back. And yeah, it's a lot. But one of the highlights was when you get to Flagstaff, there's a Del Taco there. And when you get to Flagstaff and the Del Taco's there and you're from the East Coast, you're going, I've made it. I've made it. I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm definitely speaking for myself. But it was cool because I took my first semester off from college in 2005 and drove across country, and there was a Del Taco there, and that was like all the rave that I had heard from people that I was talking to back east was like, oh, the Del Taco, oh, the In-N-Out burger, all these things. There's just
the West Coast.
Yeah, I say all these things. There's just 2 highlights. And when I saw the Del Taco, I was like, oh my God, I've made it. It was super cool. And there was just a lot of tacos that were ordered and most of them were spoiled. Sorry, Del Taco, we didn't eat them all, but yeah, like it was just really cool. So like that, I have to say, like, shout out to Flagstaff putting in the Del Taco. It's awesome that you guys have one. So thank you.
Well, you'll have to come back because there's a lot more than Del Taco here.
I know. Yeah, and that's part of me being like the blinders on with the focal points of things that I want to look at. But there are at that age, but that was definitely like a highlight. I remember specifically rolling up to Flagstaff and be like, oh man, this is beautiful. Like we're just driving through the woods kind of deal. Like, because when you get to Flagstaff, for those that haven't been there, like that was my experience. Like that was rad. Like you roll up and it's like, oh, I just came from out of the desert into a component that's got a bunch of trees and it's dope. And then there's a Del Taco there. What? And then you pull over and order tacos.
It's even better than I thought.
Yeah, it's even better than that. And then you just drive the rest of the way. So I want to know too, like, do you have like a specific Flagstaff story like in town that you're stoked on that you just want to throw out there? I just wanted to ask that. I think that'd be
I do have like just a funny thing that we were involved with at the ski area. The city decided they've always had this like winter fest kind of like event that they would do. I think it was in January, but it's basically put on through the city of Flagstaff and the Chamber of Commerce, and the whole idea is to get people out during the winter and get them downtown and kind of try to stir some economic, growth, people going in and out of restaurants, buying things at the shops. And so they approached the ski area and we're like, hey, can you guys help us make some snow down here? We want to have like a snow play area. And so, yeah, after, some deliberation, the ski area is like, yeah, we're super on board. We'll definitely help out with this. So initially it started off with them bringing some fan guns down and using like a fire truck and a city, water main. And they'd make snow in the park and then they'd load it up into trucks and drive it over to what's basically our main street in our historic like downtown Flagstaff area, right in front of this like really old courthouse that my fiance works in every day. Not at the time, but yeah, just a really weird place to have, a snow play area, I guess. And so it started out with that. But then the next year they're like, well, we want to kind of push it a little bit more. And that's when they called, me, and we're like, hey, what do you think about doing some kind of like a snowboard or ski kind of like demo down here? Like, do you have any ideas? I'm like, well, yeah, we could have a rail jam, like stuff like everyone's done like in the past. And so we started doing these rail jams, and at first it was just community involvement. So it'd be like the kids that would normally come up to the hill on any given, Saturday would get to hike this like rail park down San Francisco Street in the middle of downtown Flagstaff. And it was really fun for them. And the next year it turned into getting some, regional pros from Bear and stuff like that to come out and actually do a demo. And it kept getting bigger and bigger every year until the city finally was like, wow, we're spending way too much money on this. And, we eventually kind of got burned out of doing it because it was taking so many resources too. But it was a really fun thing that I got to do here in town. It was called Do Downtown.
That's so cool. Do Downtown. That's great, man. No, hey, let's do downtown. Let's go downtown. Let's go. No, that's rad. Rail jams are tough. Like when you're doing them off site, they're super tough.
Absolutely. A lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, super tough. But that's awesome that the city of Flagstaff was into that. So big shout out to city of Flagstaff for not only putting on the rail jam, but for having a Del Taco back in the day. And you still have it. I know you
There's
do.
2 now.
Oh, what? There's 2 now? So I can go to one, and then I can go to one and get my tacos, and then I can go to the other and get my hamburger.
You're into
that. But dude, like you went to college, like you did your thing. And that was rad. I think that so often, more times than not, not to dive too deep, but I don't know that if college was the right avenue for me, but I also feel like it gave me the opportunity to feel like I could communicate on a bit more of a professional level. But I also know people that haven't gone to college and have literally catapulted their career without any background at a university. So I want you to talk about that a little bit. Like, I mean, you totally received a scholarship there. At which university was that?
Northern Arizona University. Yeah, I think, I would agree with you. I feel like, I went to school, like thinking obviously like most people do, like a completely different thing than what it ended up being as far as my trajectory and what that meant. But one thing that I do think, university was good for was me basically just growing up, and coming out of my shell and coming from this, really shy, introverted, sheltered, privileged white kid to, oh wow, there's a lot of other people in this world and with different ideas and different cultures and attitudes and thoughts. And, really that was the biggest thing I think I took out of going to college was, really opening my eyes to like the world outside of, my little life when I was a kid. And I was in school for a really long time because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Once I went to school like a bio major and was really focused on wanting to be a doctor. Science and those kind of related studies were always like really interesting to me. And, that just seemed like that's what you had to do to be successful, was like become a physician and make lots of money. And soon I find out that that's not really something that, I want to do. And I was good at school in high school. I don't know if I was really good at school at a university level. I was just way too distracted by everything else that was going on. And my interest kind of ebbed and flowed as I went through the semesters. And I changed my major, like, I don't know, 6 times. So, yeah, it's definitely not for everybody, but I learned a lot of various things. What's that expression? Jack of all trades, or no, like master of none. I can't remember what I'm thinking.
That's it. JP Martin throwing it out there. Jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. That's right.
Yeah, I think I can 100% relate to that. So I went to school at East Tennessee State University, which is in national news right now if anybody wants to look that up. Very embarrassing. Going to go ahead and throw that out publicly. And the problem that I had with going to school was that I too could not figure out what I wanted to do, and that I was so focused on kind of the money component of what and how I was going to provide for myself later on in life that I as well started going to school to be a doctor, going into the medical field. And I remember going into like Calc 1 and Calc 2 being stoked on math and making okay grades in there. But I remember going into like chemistry and being like, fuck this. This is stupid. I'm out. Like, this is no. Like, I am not going to, I don't want anything to do with this. And so I changed my major to business and quickly got through college in the fastest 4.5 years I possibly could. That's how that went down. It was like, I mean, I'm out. The region and the outdoors and just maybe what you were interested in with photography and all that. Like how was that? Like that had to have been pretty cool being around that area. Loving kind of the outdoors there.
Yeah, absolutely. I met my dad when I was actually around 12 years old, and he bought me my first camera. He's kind of he would refer to himself as an amateur photographer, but he definitely is a very good photographer, even if he doesn't do it for a living. But yeah, he bought me a camera for Christmas one year, and it I started taking it in high school classes, and really became like this creative outlet for me, where I felt like I could, express myself. And like I said before, I was very introverted and shy in high school and didn't really feel like I had a place or that I fit in. I wasn't really into team sports. I was definitely a little bit on the nerdy side, I would say. And I quickly fell in love with taking pictures, and that turned into making prints in a dark room, and getting to develop film and spend a lot of time by myself, like in the dark, making images and experimenting with light and dark, and however I could manipulate the film and the paper when I was processing things. And that really just, I don't know, something about that media really just stuck with me. And now obviously it's all digital primarily, but I really treasured that time, and I felt like I was like good at it, and I developed confidence in something that it was very foreign to me at first, and that's really kind of carried with me my whole life. I'm still taking pictures for sure.
Yeah, I have to ask too, because like I'm obsessed with photography as well, and like shout out to Blotto, like for being on the podcast and contributing again, because I feel like when we do our due diligence with folks that are going to be on the show, and we have conversations with people, or we do our research, we try to do the best we can, and one of the best ways to do that is to just talk to the person. And I had absolutely no idea that you were all about photography. No idea. I mean, that's just shit of me for not realizing that, or knowing you as well as I could. But yeah, like there was definitely a connection there, because I too myself I'm obsessed with photography. Like I'll look at how a person managed the light through a photograph all the time, and I'm like, oh, I kind of have an idea how they did that, but you don't know what they dealt with and what their process was like. But It sounds like you just photography overall, like you really enjoy it. Like you're way more obsessed with it than I am because I've had no experience in the darkroom. Um, I can navigate a DSLR, but I have no idea or understanding of what it's like to create something that's from print in the darkroom. Maybe elaborate on that. Like I really, because and it's just from like the social media, and you referenced it, like the social media days of what we're dealing with right now, and the encounter of, yeah, I'm gonna put my snowcat in a picture, and then some people aren't putting their snowcat in a picture, but like sunset, sunrises, whatever it is. But like photography in general is just an incredible way to document things, whether it's your life or the simplistic piece of pulling out your cell phone and taking a picture, or whether you're using a darkroom. But I think my question really is, you know, is photography still a part of who you are as a person?
Oh, it's a great question. Yeah, I don't think I have a choice. I think it's like, uh, it's not an obsession. I don't do it every day, and I don't shoot like I used to. I mostly take pictures on my iPhone now, but um, it's always something that I'll be interested in, and it's always going to be a part of my life, because I think it's how I see the world, in a lot of respects, like the beauty, like you were saying, like light and dark contrast, and um, my mind kind of sees the world through the lens of a camera, even though it's the lens of my eyes, really, I guess. But I'm always looking at compositions and shapes and lines, and I think, yeah, it's really important to me. I hope I'm kind of in this process of trying to get back into it more of like a way of supplementing my income lately. I've been shooting some like real estate gigs, just doing some real estate work, which I really like because I don't have to talk to brides or or deal with
If anybody
really angry clients.
if anybody out there needs a real estate photographer, hire this guy. Hire
Yeah, I'd love
Yosh.
to.
Dude,
I really enjoy it. I really love architecture too. So I think I can remember one of my high school assignments was like to go out and shoot like architecture, and it was in black and white. And I can see this image in my head, but yeah, ever since then, like it's been, yeah,
well, I'll
photos.
just say this, like architecture photography from the perspective of the client is usually one way. It doesn't matter what it is. Weddings, architecture, brand.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
client's going, I need this. And then it's the job of the photographer to interpret that. Absolutely. And I mean, it, I can't even imagine. It's got to be, yeah, I think photography is like light management. That's how I've always looked at it. I've told you that before when we caught up. And I
Yeah.
think, what's cool is, I mean, man, you've got so many different things that you're trying to fold into one capture. And I think that can kind of be applied to so many different things in life. But where did it grow, or maybe where did it fizzle out?
I think when I got to school and was riding on the hill every day, um, after class, like I definitely was bringing my camera with me a lot of times and chasing friends around and stuff. But uh, you know, school's hectic and trying to have a social life and a part-time job and everything. It just kind of like took a back seat initially. When I started working at the ski area and promoting the social media component of our park program, I started kind of creating our original like content, and it was all like crap. I was shooting video and trying to edit like little videos together for like on Apple iMovie or whatever it was called, and make stills and and run the cat at night and stuff. So it definitely had its place for a while there until I met some real photographers that had more time to kind of help promote our park program. But I also think earlier on, kind of coming up and growing up, I was so in love with snowboarding that I quickly realized that I wasn't like that good and I wasn't going to be a professional snowboarder, which, I definitely daydreamed about when I was younger. So for a while, I thought maybe I'll cross over with this camera and take pictures of snowboarders and, maybe I'll follow that route. And so I definitely had my head in the magazines, like most kids. And instead of paying attention to the riders' names, I was more looking at, the fine print and noticing names like Eastone and Dean Blotto Gray on a lot of those covers and in the spreads and the magazines. And that sort of, kind of took me down that path. I think also that helped lead me down the ski industry path as well, for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was the same way. I was definitely obsessed with the magazines and the photos and what riders were doing and how kind of photographers were interpreting that movement. And like, it sounds like as the program progressed and maybe so did social media and your development there with that you were just like you said, creating what was your version of authenticity for what you were trying to build. And does I have to ask, not to just hit on Blotto all the time, but like, where does that connection come into play for Sunset Parks and your involvement there with Blotto?
Yeah, so it's a really cool story. Blotto's definitely, a good homie. And before he was a friend of mine, he was just this, basically like a celebrity to me. And like I was saying in the magazines, and once we started kind of developing a little bit of a following on social media, and that would be Sunset Terrain Parks, I kind of offshoot tried to create our own brand, not independent of the ski area, but like a lot of like Unbound and Mammoth. But I was managing that and answering comments from followers and whatever else. And one day, I opened my phone and had a message on Instagram, and it was Dean Blotto Gray, and he wanted to link up and come to the ski area. And I was just like flabbergasted. I like probably was like shaking. I might have screamed out loud, like fandom kind of thing. And was just like, yes, of course, we'd love to have you. Like, what can we do for you? Like, let's get you tickets. Let's get you whatever you need. Do you need a stretch Hummer to pick you up at the airport? Like, no.
Hot chocolate?
Right. So,
you want a coffee? Double latte?
Right. Yeah, I was super fanning out, just like crazy, like heart palpitations almost, and which is insane to think of like that, especially after you meet someone like Blotto and get to know them a little bit, because he couldn't be any more real of a person. And obviously his impact on this whole industry is monumental, and I really respect and admire and look up to him in a big way.
That's so rad. So rad. And along the lines of kind of you unfolding your story, I've got somebody else that's been around you for a minute, and his name is Matty Rowan. And he is our next special guest question for you, and I'm going to play it for you now. So here we go.
Yo, Blade Divers. It's Matt Rowan coming at you from Mount Hood Meadows. Second time caller, long time listener, big fan. Yosh, stoked you're on the show. I got some questions. At least the ones we can talk about right now. Tell everybody about your mustache in Park City. That was pretty all-time Yosh moment. Or the Subaru story, Las Vegas, baby. And the MEs and the MPs that we used to run over a decade ago together at the Arizona Snow Bowl. Look forward to hearing from you, bud. Talk to you guys soon.
Maddie. Love that guy. Well, I'll go backwards again, I guess. Thanks for calling, Matt. Emmys and MPs, yeah, that was the go-to. That was the only thing we were allowed to touch. Was the Emmy. That was the park cat, and that was the first machine I ever ran. I spent a ton of time in Maddie's passenger seat while he was here at Snow Bowl. And that's kind of what got me into it, really, was watching him and riding along in that cat. And, little did I know how difficult it was to build the things that he was building at the time with an ME. He made it look so easy. But, yeah, that was top of the line, state-of-the-art machines around Snow Bowl back in the day, for sure. And by the way, we had those cats well after Bisons and 350s were out. Yeah.
So that is a key element to the story.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like he was alluding at something there, but yeah. So you had those machines after the evolution happened, right?
Oh yeah, we still have like thigh calls and like 3700s laying around up there. Like they just like won't get rid of anything.
Dude,
it's like a museum of snowcats. It's crazy.
We need to get can you get a picture of that? Can you? I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, we still have that ME. We still have that ME.
Dude,
it still runs. I use it as a pick cat quite often. It's hilarious.
Oh, we need to get a photo of that. That'd be cool. I mean, if you can make it happen, amazing.
I will.
Dude, send them over. We got to show everybody that. Yeah, absolutely.
Then the Subaru story.
Subaru story.
Yeah. So I thought it would be sweet to buy a Impreza when I was in college, later in my college career. Always obsessed with like WRC rally cars. Like, it's all amazing. But I had like a 2-wheel drive car when I was in college, and I needed something that was all-wheel drive. So I convinced my mom to help me get this car, which was completely the wrong vehicle. I should have bought a Tacoma or a pickup or something. But I got a Subaru and Impreza with a wing on it. I was cruising around like some hot shot.
Wait a minute. Wait, by wing you mean like park bench on the trunk? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like it looked like a shopping cart that you would push around, like a giant fairing. It's ridiculous. Looking back on it.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, I would have rode with you. Dog.
Oh, I mean,
I would have been there.
Very cool at the time. Looking back on it, I'm a little embarrassed by it, but it was a great car. I mean, very fast. And I think the story he's specifically referring to was one of our trips out to Mammoth to go see all his homies out there at the time, and ride, obviously. We were just west of Tonopah, so we missed our left turn at like Fish Lake Valley. I don't know if you've ever driven up that way on like the 95 or 93 through Nevada. That's the way we would always go to Mammoth from Arizona.
And does that put you pretty much out of like Green Church Road?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Been that way.
So that turn, we missed that. I just wasn't paying attention or whatever else we can't talk about. And then all of a sudden we're in Tonopah, and I get pulled over, of course, because I'm speeding, and cops, pretty cool, lets us go and just tells us to slow down, and we get out of there, and I'm like, whew, dodged the bullet, and we are heading down, I think it's 6, like towards Bishop, but it'll take you to like Benton Hot Springs area and stuff. You're basically in the middle of nowhere at this point. And my turbo decides to overheat, explode, and I throw a rod through my block, and the car is basically like totaled. And it's probably like 2 o'clock in the morning.
What?
Yeah, insane.
Oh my God.
Nobody's really worried though. Like, we're just like, oh, we got AAA. Like, and one bar, on the cell phones. Luckily, like got through to a tow truck, and then proceeded to wait about 4.5, 5 hours till that tow truck showed up. We didn't get
Wow.
the car to Bishop until like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Might have been a little later. I don't know. I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
Wow.
But then somebody drove down from Mammoth and swooped us up, and we proceeded to have a really great time that week with a rental car. And it was like a long next 10 days. I dropped the rental car off and drove it back to Arizona, dropped Maddie and his girlfriend off, and then drove back to Mammoth with my mom and my girlfriend at the time, with a truck and a trailer to pick my car up, to bring it back. Like, it was just a crazy ordeal.
Dude, that's heavy. Like 2 a.m, middle of nowhere, breaking down. Like not necessarily breaking down like car totaled, engine block totaled.
Yeah,
Heavy.
screwed.
Heavy. Oh my goodness, man. That's gnarly. No, well, shout out to Maddie, man. That was really cool. Like there's definitely some insight stories there, but the last one that I really am the most interested in is the mustache.
Oh yeah, the mustache. I'll have to send you that photo too. So over the course of Maddie and I's friendship together, we've grown a lot, we've learned a lot, and we've made some pretty questionable decisions together. I don't know what it is, but we took a trip up to Park City. Cooper was there at the time. Shout out to Coop. He hooked us up, and we had, got the tour of the town and rode at Park City like all week. And we were having some particular, day where we decided to go to the grocery store, grab some beers, and I think we had already been drinking when this decision was made, most likely. But we walked down the hair dye aisle, and Maddie was like, "Oh, dude, your mustache is epic," because I had this really pervy mustache at the time. He's like, "You should dye it like another color," and I was like, "Hell yeah, let's do that." Well, you're a fellow ginger, I think, so if you've ever experimented with hair dye, you would know that people of the red hair complexion, our hair doesn't dye very easily. It's actually,
no, it does not. I've never experienced the situation, but I've definitely heard stories.
Right.
And for those that don't know, yes, Yosh and I share a bond of the ginger descent. We are, my friend, daywalkers.
That's right. Well, so we get back to the condo with some Just for Men and those beers I was mentioning, and I mix that shit up and lather it on my little dick broom, and and after the recommended time, I wash it out, and guess what? It's still red. So I'm like, well, that didn't work. And then I'm like, well, I'm just gonna I'll double that time. So I don't remember how long it was, and then I'm pretty sure I forgot how long it had been until my face started burning.
Oh no!
And I washed it off really quick, and basically I had a black mustache now on a ginger head of hair, and what looked like some sort of venereal disease around my mouth, blisters and sores and all this, because I actually burned my skin around, my upper lip.
Oh.
Yeah, so I was looking haggard, and we were like halfway through the trip. So that basically was the topic of conversation for the rest of that trip. When anyone would meet me, or I would be introduced to somebody, or talking to some pretty lady in a bar or what have you. So it was pretty funny. And then obviously I had to come back to Snowball and explain to my boss, Dale Hagelin, shout out to Dale Hagelin, what I was doing with my mustache. And yeah, that was good times. I'll never forget that trip. It was a good time.
Josh, I'm most interested in kind of, I mean, we've talked about your photography and your special interests and kind of where and what you were interested in and around, but I want to know where machines kind of entered into where maybe they were a part of your life. And maybe what led you to those snowcats that you're talking about with those MEs and those MPs.
Yeah, I really didn't have any desire or interest in running heavy equipment. That really all started, at the ski area once I started working there. Definitely, like any kid, messed around in the backyard and played in the dirt and pretended like I was a bulldozer or something, pushing up piles of dirt and doing stuff like that. But as I got older, like never really crossed my mind. And I started at the ski area as a snowboard instructor in college. I actually applied to be a lifty, but they wouldn't have me, which is kind of insane. Yeah, and then that year I didn't actually apply with anybody else, so it was like a whole nother year went by, and then I applied for lift ops, and I applied as a snowboard instructor, and I think I applied in like F&B. Like I just wanted to be up there, like I was already coming up anyways. I might as well like get paid a little bit when I was there, and that was sort of more of a priority. I need to make some money to kind of like help pay for things other than non-school related things like car insurance and whatever else. But yeah, I started working as a snowboard instructor, and kind of enjoyed that. I really, I love snowboarding, and I really enjoyed trying, at least I will put that in quotation marks, trying to teach people how to snowboard. Could be really frustrating at times, and I think I have a tendency to like over explain things and like confuse the hell out of people, or at least that's the look on their face. Like, what is this guy talking about? But yeah, I was sitting at lineup one day, like early in the morning. We had like early bird lessons, and we would go down there and just kind of hang out and see if we get a lesson. And the snowcat came by, and I just like kind of picked my head up and was like, wow, that is a crazy looking machine. Like, that's what puts the corduroy on the ground. And like I had certainly seen them before, but that was like the first moment where I really looked at it. And the operator, I remember who it was, Doug Southard. Shout out to Dougie Fresh.
Dougie Fresh.
Still at the ski area, still grooming. He's like 65 or 66. That like I saw him today, like pushing snow around. Crazy. He's an animal. Anyways, he was like blading a maze out, like, and I was just so fascinated by like his ability to like make that snow flat and bring snow in and process it. And obviously I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but like I was just mesmerized by it. And I looked at whoever was standing next to me, and I was just like, I want to do that. And so I started talking to mountain ops guys and my ski and ride school director, Jaime Gonzalez, and I was like, I don't want to teach anymore. I want to do that. And he's like, well, you're talking to the wrong person. I'm like, go talk to Dale Haglund. So I went and talked to Dale, and got on trail crew that summer and started, trying to prove that I was worth a shit and, could be trusted to get in a really old ME and try to learn how to run a cat. And that's kind of where it all started.
And one of the great things that I think you should really talk about is kind of like the experience there, that great skiing that's in the desert. You were given an opportunity to run a machine, but in an area that I don't think that most people really associate with skiing or snowboarding, and that Snowball really has something that's unique there with being able to ski in the desert.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, native Arizona, and until, my mom drove me up to the Snowball, I didn't know. And there's still a lot, I think the word's kind of getting out now, with our marketplace in Phoenix, our biggest, closest marketplace, 2.5 hours away. It's like the 4th or 5th largest city in the country. A lot of people down there, and there's still people that just don't know about Snowball and the San Francisco Peaks, which is actually like an entire volcanic field. If you're at the top of Snowball and you look west towards California, you can actually see every type of volcano in this field. I think there's like shield, dome, There's one other one I can't think of. And then like obviously you're standing on a stratovolcano, which is like similar to like Mount St. Helens. They used to think that Humphreys Peak and the San Francisco peaks were actually closer to like 15 or 16,000 feet. And they at some point blew up towards the northeast and created like the inner basin and like all these, some of my really favorite places to hang out and where all of our really good backcountry skiing is at. So there's this whole, basically if I dropped you off in the inner basin, you would think you were in the middle of, the Colorado, somewhere in Summit County or the San Juans even. I mean, it's totally a juxtaposition to the desert. And that became like, once I was in my career, that really became a driving force behind my motivation, was trying to get the word out that we do have great skiing here, and then eventually having a great park program.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's so cool. Like Arizona is definitely yes, it's a highlight for myself with Del Taco, but that's not the only thing they have there. Like Flagstaff is definitely really cool, and I think that what's awesome is that from that road that you roll in on, you can see some pretty profound peaks, and that's awesome. When you're rolling through there on 40 and you come up there, it's like, damn, I've made it. Like this is kind of like the barrier to entry if I can get through. That's how I've always viewed 40 when I roll through I-40, or when I have rolled through 40 going through there. So yeah, I think it's awesome that you've been a part of that. And there is some really great skiing there. I have fucked up and not been able to get down there. I need to make that happen, dude. Like I've said that so many times. Like I haven't been there. I need to come down there, man. I haven't been there. Yeah, I need to make that happen. Need to stop saying that and just go do it. But you just mentioned something that was kind of a, and I want you to unpack it, man. Your journey at Snowball. I really do. You've hit on several highlights of what you've kind of accomplished along the way there briefly, but and some folks, but Snowball, your journey there and what that's kind of looked like. If you could unpack that for us, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. I think, I mentioned the getting on trail crew, and starting to try to prove myself to the mountain ops director, and, getting in a snowcat was the ultimate goal. And I think, that next winter, I feel like after trail crew, I was bartending a little bit in the lodge because I worked like a summer job in F&B there, and it was really early season, and I was bartending, and one of my patrons would turn out to be Matty Rowan, and he, we hadn't met yet, and I didn't really know him, but he, I was just.
Wait, hold on. I gotta stop. I gotta stop you there. Matty Rowan.
Yeah.
You were serving Matty Rowan, and that's how you connected. That's the whole. Dude. That is
that's
cool.
That's kind of the black hole moment, right? So like, yeah, like.
Dude, that's
I'm
awesome.
Just being a bartender, right? Like thinking about wanting to be outside and like irritated that all these people are skiing and having beers and having fun, but I'm doing my job and I'm socializing as best as I can, and start asking this guy how his day's going, and like, oh, what are you having, and whatever else. I'm like, oh, you live up here? Like, what do you do for a living? And of course he's like, yeah, I live up here. I run a snowcat. Like I'm actually the terrain park builder, which he was at the time. And I was like, holy shit, like I want to do that. I'm like, of course he rolls his eyes probably. I'm like, oh yeah, I just want my beer. Like, let me go in peace. But I kind of, kind of pulled his arm a little bit, and he was gracious enough to talk to me a little bit about it. And from there, he was super supportive, and basically the one person I can really say is the main reason I got into a cat. And then, my mentor, while he was here, and then, throughout my career, Matt's always been there to kind of hold me up and steer me in the right direction and call me on my bullshit. And props to Matt Rowan for sure.
Dude, that's That's a big component. Like that's dope. I didn't know that. That's rad. So you were doing your thing in the bar, and Rowan walks in there and is like, yo, I just hit up this, that, and the other, and you find out that he's in charge of the park, and that's how things take off.
Yeah, exactly. He was kind of actually really, I would say, sort of the beginning of like the park program here in Arizona. And he was only here for like a year or two, I want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong, Maddie. But yeah, he ended up going back to June, I think, or when he left here, he might have gone to Mammoth. I think he went back to June, Sam and those boys. But yeah, he was running that ME, and he was taking the 4 really old, crappy fall line boxes that were 15 years old and the beat up rail that the good old boy in the shop put together for the boys back in the day, and trying to turn it into what he was used to at June. And you can imagine what the difficulties he faced with that. And at the time, we had no snowmaking whatsoever. So, I would sit in his passenger seat and watch him farm snow with his tiller, because he was on 6 inches of desert POW that was packed down from 3 feet that fell out of the sky to, grouser deep snow. And you couldn't blade it because you would just roll up dirt. And he showed me how to, be light on the snow and, use the cat efficiently and get whatever you could done. And it was, pretty slim pickings in those days, but he did some really cool stuff while he was here. And that's basically what made me go like, oh my gosh, like I want to learn this. And yeah, it's been a really cool journey since then for sure.
Dude, that's crazy. And so, I mean, the evolution of your career extends beyond that. Where is the opportunity that you got to jump in that seat behind the sticks? You were learning from Maddie, but when did you jump behind the sticks? When did you get that shot?
Yeah, I feel like that year I got in a cat, and I went to Grave. Like Dale basically gave me a shot. I think it wasn't at the beginning of the season. I think it might have been like, a couple months later, and my timeline might be all messed up. It was a long time ago, but I got in a cat on Grave, and I would basically ride in Maddie's passenger seat in the park on swing, and then I would sleep in my car for like 2 hours, and then at 2 a.m. would like get in the cat and go, groom the prairie, which is our like beginner slope, and learn how to run the machine, run the towers and blade dive and pull up dirt and, just make all the mistakes everybody did. And that was pretty much that entire winter. Like I was just so obsessed and mesmerized by it. That's all I wanted to do. And so I continued to do that season. And I believe Matt left that summer. And that's when I kind of really got a chance to kind of step up with the other park groomer at the time, whose name is evading me. But after a season of doing that, basically at the time, ski school was actually managing the park and patrol. It wasn't a mountain operations component at the ski area. And there was a lot of dysfunctionality with that, like it was just poor communication between, the ski school guys who needed this or wanted that, and the guys who were building it, and then the day staff that was running it, and patrol that was sort of overseeing all of it from a safety standpoint. And it was just very disorganized. And I had an opportunity, and I approached the mountain manager and was like, hey, I think we need to bring this under your umbrella. Like, I wrote up a proposal, and he pitched it to his boss, the GM at the time, J.R. Murray, and that's what happened. And all of a sudden, I'm a third year operator had no idea what I was doing, and now I'm basically in charge of developing a park program. And we sat down in JR's office, and he goes, "We want it to be safe and fun." And that was my directive. And I basically, like, it was, here you go. And I kind of just ran with it from there.
Let's talk about let's back up to like that college component that we were talking about, because you and I both agreed that well, I don't think we agreed, but I stated that if I could have gone a different route, I don't think college would have been it. And you kind of stated the same comment. And then let's kind of unpack that like moment where you taught yourself to weld and write budgets, because those are kind of the two stark contrasts that I have always viewed, whether it's operating machine or welding, and then the analytical side of it of data and the budget component and the advocation component and the justification component, like all those things aligned. You can't just talk about the equipment aspect of it without speaking to the analytical aspect of it. Where were you able to kind of develop a sense of stature to be able to justify where you went from kind of a very simplistic program to a very large program that was later on in the future? How did you, where was that ability? How did you create that ability to be able to go, okay, I can teach myself how to do this, I can teach myself how to do this, and I can also speak to the analytics? How did that happen?
I think initially I felt more comfortable in the office and, doing office work than I did in the CAT, and so that stuff probably from college and taking business classes and, writing business plans and stuff in college to, like that, just like, oh, I've already done this stuff. Like, this is easy, like I know how to use Excel, I know how to use spreadsheets and all that stuff. Kind of, I had been doing that in college, so I had more experience doing that than I did running a snowcat. And I, for some reason, could articulate my thoughts and, my vision for what, the company park program should look like, to my boss. And that was critical in, getting what I wanted and what the, the crew wanted out of the park program, which, the sky was the limit, and that's where we wanted to take it, but that's obviously, in retrospect, maybe not where it should have gone. But yeah, so I think initially that really helped me, the university and those classes I took definitely helped me communicate with my boss and the company, and kind of setting up those the program. As far as like analytics, I mean, one, I had two guiding principles from the company, fun and safe. The fun part, is pretty subjective based on the guest and the user, right? But the safe part's pretty obvious, and that was always a struggle, as it has been on a lot of ski areas, trying to basically work with patrol and develop features, jumps, and other things that were safe and that they were seeing fewer and fewer numbers on. And one thing that really spoke to the company and to, patrol was our declining injury rate. We went from like these astronomical like numbers to like double digit declines year after year, and like the number of 1050s that we were experiencing in our terrain parks, and specifically on our jumps. And I think the biggest thing with that was obviously experience and knowing, what kind of jumps to build, but where to build them and, how big to make them was always a really big topic of conversation and manager meetings. And I really struggled with, trying to emulate these newer hybrid style jumps, step overs and stuff, not step overs, but like a hybrid style takeoff, steep trajectories, tall knuckles, long landings. because in their eyes, that was a really, really big jump. It might only have a 25 or 30 foot, deck length on it, but when they're looking at it from the bottom of the chair, it's massive. And I had a really hard time just trying to explain the physics and the geometry to our GM. But they trusted me, and after I finally learned how to build a jump, we saw those numbers just plummet, and our jumps went from these horrible 20-foot step downs to the largest jump we ever had in our large line at Snowball was probably like 60 feet, and it was a step over hybrid jump, and we never had injuries on it, mostly because it was intimidating and our clientele wasn't going to hit it. But I think that if you can figure out a way to talk to your management and have data and numbers and speak their language, then you can really push your program in the right direction. And for us, that was the key to getting all the departments behind what we were trying to do.
I think Elijah Hamilton will definitely appreciate you saying data.
Yeah, that's definitely where I pulled that from.
I'm a big data guy. Come on, data.
I think I say data
too. Shout out to Elijah. I think one of the cool things that every no matter what industry you're in, there are all kinds of contractors and suppliers, and I think that's one of the cool things that you've mentioned and us catching up and discussing and pre-production to all of this is that there are so many components to the creation of whatever it is, whether it's a park, whether it's a alpine program, whether it's a ski school offering. It doesn't matter. Like there are outside entities that you have to involve to be able to create something that is a sustainable item for somebody to participate in and on. And that is kind of like this mystique that I feel like in the beginning that I was wrapped up in with trying to go, okay. And I've mentioned it before, but like, where do you get the white plastic that goes on the box? And where do you get your flags? And, where do you get your tools and all? And it's just, there are so many different ways to go about procuring some of those items, but you were really involved in some capital projects in which you supervised something that maybe you were working directly with or indirectly with, but how did that kind of shape your experience at Snowball? Was that something that you appreciated? I have to imagine it was.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be who I am today and have the skills that I do have if it weren't for those capital projects, for sure. Like I said before, we didn't have snowmaking until 2012, and being in the desert, we have our good years and our bad years like everybody else. But when it doesn't snow here, we don't open, at least up until 2012, and that was, that's not a sustainable business model for anybody in the ski industry, anyways. And so a lot of effort over a lot of years from the previous owner, Eric Borowski, and J.R. Murray, who's our GM, and now I forget his new title, but he's like basically head of capital development for our entire collective. They made it happen through the Forest Service, and we ended up getting approved to install snowmaking. And the key component of that was we don't have a water source. It's the desert. There is water, but there's not a lot of it. And we got approved to use reclaimed water, which is one thing that really kind of started to put Snowball on the map, was this whole controversy, over potable versus reclaimed water. And we found it to be a sustainable and responsible use of that water. It's treated to an A+ standard at our local treatment plant here in Flagstaff. It's used to water the grass in our kids' playgrounds and schools, and that's what we use to make snow. So that initial project was creating a 12-inch cathodically protected pipeline from town to the ski area, up our access road and across a number of public and private lands, 15.1 miles in total, I think. It was a tremendous undertaking, and yeah, we definitely had our share of contractors and vendors on that one, from the pump houses with Torrent and the SC group, Towsley Welding and fabrication, putting in a lot of that snowmaking supply line, as well as on-hill stuff. And yeah, I got to kind of learn how a project like that is done by basically just getting thrown into it. Smaller ski area, we don't have a lot of resources. And my boss asked me to step up and help him monitor the project and, get resources and machines and keep track of the money a little bit, and invoicing and getting people paid and getting stuff here when it needed to be, logistics. And that was really eye-opening. I think Elia talked a little bit about getting into that construction realm of it. And it really, was an amazing experience, and one that I never thought I would be a part of. And that has continued over the last 10 years, or 9 years, I guess. We've continued with multiple chairlift upgrades. We have 2 6-pack chairs that we've put in, including a telemix that we just did this past summer. A couple other 6-grip quads, a bunch of base area facility improvements. Yeah, you name it, we've been doing it, as well as on-hill snowmaking, and it's been crazy. I don't know where the time's gone by. I feel like I've spent more time working on capital projects than I have actually in the park in the last 5, 6, 7 years. But yeah, it's been really really rewarding and really challenging, but definitely love that experience.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people need to maybe draw from and understand, is that the expansion of what your resources are is super important, and you've got to kind of maintain what you have. And some of those maintenance components are large pieces, whether it's a chairlift, whether it's snowmaking, whether it's access, and that means dirt work. All those things are super important. You've had some really key people involved in some of those projects, and I just want to make sure you give some shout outs to those individuals. I know you've mentioned Ryan Clifford and Dale Hagland, and just want to give you an opportunity to shout out them real quick for sure.
Yeah, Dale's been my boss for forever. Dale was Matty Rowan's boss when he was here. Dale's built that ski area. He's been there for over 30 years, and I've learned countless things from that man, almost all positive for sure. We've definitely had a tumultuous relationship, but I respect him, and I've looked up to him for a long time, and he's always treated me fair. And yeah, I really appreciate him giving me that opportunity to learn and grow up there, and especially with all those capital projects, and then eventually getting me, into an excavator, and having that as a skill set is incredibly valuable to me, especially in the summertime. Now I'm a seasonal employee now. I don't work full time year round for the ski area, but I've been able to go and put snowmaking systems in for other companies and stuff in Colorado and Canada. And I wouldn't have had those opportunities if it weren't for Dale and putting me in an excavator and putting me in those situations, which were uncomfortable at times, but have really made me who I am today, at least professionally. And I always had this idea in my head that I was trying to train somebody to do what I do, as in build and manage the park program so that I could move on someday, and progress and climb the ladder, so to speak. And Ryan would be that guy. He's one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life, probably the hardest working person I've ever met in my life. And his attitude and positivity, while we all have our bad days, like he is just a shining example of like a good human. And he has excelled. I think he's been running a cat now for like 5 years. He was my day staff supervisor first, running a rake and just crushing it, and showed interest in the cat. And actually, Matty Roan came back one year. Like I think he took a hiatus from June and just kind of came out to help us because I was having trouble managing and trying to run a cat, and run the day staff and plan events and do the budgets and do all that. I just felt like we've all been there, haven't had enough time. But Matty came out and Ryan rode in his cat, and he basically hit the ground running and has not stopped pushing snow. I think that kid pushes snow in his dreams. But he is so important to what we do at Snow Bowl and has been for a long time. And I could not do anything. And I don't think I would still be doing it if it weren't for him. So yeah, shout out to Ryan Clifford for sure.
That's so cool. That's awesome, man. I think it's super important that, you've got people in your life that have an impact, and whether or not they're involved indirectly or directly, it's important that they have an impact either way. Okay, so Josh, we got a segment on the show that's absolutely incredible, and it is the push road question of the day. And the best part about the push road question of the day is it comes from all over, and they can range from broad topics to very specific, but the listeners have an opportunity, as well as other operators who are also listeners, to contribute to the show. And they are fantastic. And I'm trying to answer them in the order that they are received. They're in the abundance that I have received them. And so thank you, everybody, for your patience as I try to answer all of your push road questions. But today's push road question, we're going to go ahead and roll that intro and we'll get into it. So here we go.
The push road question of the day.
That's right, the push road question of the day. I'm a little biased to the intro there. Today's push road question of the day comes from France, which is amazing. And it comes from a gentleman by the name of Antoni. And the question relates to kind of, Josh, that relationship or the topic of day crew and cat crew and that relationship dynamic. And I think what would be great is if you could kind of draw from your experience with respect to just having to manage that and then ultimately shaping the employee experience, but just what that relationship was like for you having to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Anthony. I appreciate it. My experience has been, very interesting one. I think one of the most challenging things that I've had to do developing that park program is basically get the day staff and the cat crew to understand the role of the other crew. And what I mean by that is, when we're in our snowcats, we're in our own little world, and we have, a way we do things and a reason and a thought process for why we do those things. And the day staff has the same kind of thing going on in their head. And a spork or a rake versus a blade and a tiller, and their relationship is sometimes really hard to articulate to somebody who hasn't done it. So if I have a park operator or a cat operator that hasn't been on day staff and doesn't understand the needs of that crew, and vice versa, sometimes it's challenging to get them to see eye to eye and understand that they have this symbiotic relationship. I guess basically what I'm saying on Tony is that the disconnect between day staff and the cat crew or the night crew is real, and one can't exist without the other. The day staff needs the cat crew, and the cat crew needs the day staff. And figuring out how to get the two crews to work together harmoniously is the manager's job. And that can be challenging at times, but it's also extremely rewarding when you can get those two teams to work together in such a way to create these beautiful pieces of art. Like I've had the experience in Mammoth, California with some special event builds where I'm just blown away at what the day staff and the cat crew can do when they're working together in harmony. It's an amazing thing to witness.
Josh, big shout out to Anthony for the push road question of the day. If you would like to submit a push road question of the day, you can feel free to do so through our social media channels. Send us a DM right to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you're into all of that, please give us a message. It would be amazing. We are all about trying to answer questions in the order that they are received. And it's pretty awesome because each guest gets the opportunity to tackle the questions that are coming in. And I think what's really cool about your story, Yosh, is that you've got such a, I don't want to call it scripted because it's not, but because it's your story, but there is a opportunity that you saw, a window that you took where you were driving the train. You were moving forward, you were pushing snow uphill, you were blade diving, you were ogging in, whatever it was. But there was probably a version of what you wanted to see happen and a version of maybe what you did not want to see happen. And I've always kind of unfolded this or that thought in my head as well with respect to just, I'd like to see myself go here, or I'd like to see myself go here. And I think that boils down to mastery and success and the pursuit of both. So I would love to have your take on the pursuit of success versus mastery of a career in the snow industry.
I think the mastery of the career is definitely, in my mind, was, building the park program, understanding the machine, understanding the dynamics of the various different departments and all the inner workings of the ski area, and learning as much as I could along the way so that, like I was saying before, I could take that next step and move on to something that would continue to provide me with growth from a professional standpoint. And that certainly did happen for a long time. I don't know that I accomplished my end goal, which at the time was, probably being something like a mountain manager. I don't know if that's still what it is. I'm still figuring it out. Like a lot of adults my age, still figuring it out. But I think, in relationship to success in my life, success in my life to me isn't necessarily my career and what I do for a living. It's, trying to live my life the best way I can. And what I mean by that is, for lack of a cliche or better term, living every day to the fullest and trying to get the most out of it. And lately it's been about putting that life in perspective and what's really important to me. And, like work and my job, and my career are very important to me, but they're not who I am as a person. And for a long time, I think I thought they were, and I got lost in that and really kind of went to a dark place, especially when things weren't going the way I wanted. it almost would derail me more because I couldn't really keep things in perspective, if that makes sense.
Pursuit of success and pursuit of mastery, and success is defined differently than mastery. Mastery, I feel like, it's almost like unattainable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, like it's almost unattainable, and you're always kind of chasing it. Versus where success is kind of defined differently by each individual, and so often, more than not, like I said, there's just this. Oh, I've reached this tier. I've reached this tier. I'm here. I'm there. I've made it, and I'm going to just stay there. And that's where we've talked about before, where people have kind of siloized themselves within this industry, and they can't really see what the younger generation is trying to kind of show them. Like, well, hey, man, like, or hey, gal, this is, we view it this way. This is a better way of looking at it. And I have been so narrow minded sometimes at seeing it that way that it's been a detriment to my career. But I think what's cool is that, like, we've cut up before, and you've talked about being able to kind of like balance that light and the dark, and connecting with whether with the earth and those that we encounter along the way. I think that was cool, like the fact that you were able to just contrast the difference between, like, or really the alliance between the photography component and what you've been able to endure with just the pursuit of success and mastery with respect to just connecting that light management piece and going, hey, like the light and the dark and what we endure on this earth along the way, that's what we're working together to kind of piece together. Like, that was deep as, oh man, like quote of the year. I'm literally going like, whoa. Yeah, maybe expand on that. Like, I would love for you to go deeper.
Yeah, I think, a few years ago, the company, we had a rough winter, and the company decided to furlough the entire staff, like across all the resorts. And it was like 2 weeks unpaid. You had to take it immediately, and you couldn't use your vacation time. And I was sort of already in a bad place. Like, I had, through mostly my own doing, had just been kind of sort of burned out and felt like I wasn't, on that trajectory anymore to mastering my craft, I guess, as you put it. And I took that as an opportunity to kind of step away from it for a minute. And that's when I went and did that snowmaking installation job for a couple summers. But that time away from the ski industry, even though I did come back in the winter and run a cat, I stepped out of my management role, and I really needed that time to kind of put my life into perspective and decide what was worth mastering, I guess. And I kind of pivoted to trying to master my life and take care of myself more instead of putting every bit of my being into what I was doing, which was to a fault a lot of times. And not necessarily in the company's eyes, but I pushed myself so hard that I lost track of what I was even trying to do. And that had so many other implications in my life, like both my mental health and physical health, that I just had to make a change. And it allowed me to get into a place where I could look at the light a lot more, because I was in a really dark place. And that's where that quote came from, because since then I've really been able to decide what's important to me in my life. And it was that career for so long, and now it's about being happy and trying to be a good person every day. And it's a lot of work. I found out. I'm trying not to think about myself so much and be grateful for what I have and the life that I've been able to live because it's a great one, and I kind of lost sight of that. So I think that is my pursuit of success at this point in my life, and I'm less worried about my job and my career and more worried about my overall health and happiness for sure.
Dude, that is, and that is why I wanted to talk to you. That is why I wanted to catch up with you. People often feel like that chasing something that is, whether it's their version of success or mastery, it's kind of like this escalator where the stairs are always moving and you're running as fast as you can and you're never really going to get to the top. And you ultimately land where you're still running. Like you're literally landing on the stairs and you're realizing that very quickly the most important things in your life are the people that are around you, and mastering and being successful at life is the most important component to who you are as a person. And I just want to be very clear that, to everybody that's listening right now, that no matter what you hold as a title, no matter who you are as a person out there in the world, the most impactful thing that you can do for you is to give a shit about yourself. And for anybody that's struggling with that, like, send us a message. Like, just shoot us a message on Instagram. Happily we'll reach it back out. Like, do that. Like, mastering who you are as a person is definitely difficult, and shaping who you are and landing back on your feet. Like, I get that. Super hard. Transitioning out of a job, transitioning in life is super hard, super difficult. So yeah, man, like, shout out to you for like realizing that, Yosh. Like, that's big. I just have the utmost respect for that. Like, realizing that early on and understanding that that's what you needed to invest in.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, man, big shout out. Yeah. I one thing that I know that you and I have in common, that I have always wanted to chase. Speaking of chasing, and I Mammoth is and will always be a special place. And you were around some pretty profound people there. You had the opportunity to go there. You spent some time in Mammoth with a legendary program to this day. It's not going away unless they decide to make it go away. But Mammoth Unbound is a pretty profound, prolific, planted a lot of seeds program. It's got a lot of people there still to this day that are making impacts in the industry. And I don't know the whole story, and I want to know how you got involved with being a part of that program.
Yeah, for sure. I think at least my generation and growing up and snowboarding and a lot of films that I was watching, Mammoth and June were in a lot of those films, and so that sort of was always kind of mecca to me when it came to snowboarding and freestyle terrain. And so I started going out there when I was in high school. My mom took me out there for the first time. I think I was like 15, maybe 16 years old. Just her and I went out there on a road trip this summertime, like June, I want to say, or July even. It might have been one of those big years that they had. And I was just blown away by that place. It was the first like big mountain that I ever went to. And I just was like, oh, I'm coming back here. Like, this place is insane. And that was before, like, I even really knew what I was looking at. I got the worst sunburn of my life on that trip, by the way, too. I bought one of those white, like the classic Mammoth, like t-shirt shop, like woolly, snowboarding, like Mammoth logo. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I'm full on fucking tourist, right? Like, buy the hoodie, put it on, and I'm wearing it like on the hill. That kind of guy. Yeah, hilarious. I know. But
Oh man.
yeah, horrible. My face peeled. It was not good. Wear sunscreen, kids.
Uh,
Seriously. Um,
especially if you're a ginger,
especially, yeah.
like Yosh and I.
That's right. It's very important. I put it on like 3 times a day. Um, yeah, so it just called to me, and that whole Eastern Sierra, like that range, like I think John Muir refers to it as like the range of light. I think he's a very good photographer. If anybody wants to check out his stuff. Yeah, it just has this power to it. And the way the Sierra Crest breaks right there, right where Mammoth is sitting, it's part of why Mammoth gets so much snow, because where it's situated in like this valley essentially, and the only kind of like break for the weather coming off the Pacific and hundreds of miles north and south, like funnels those storms right into there. And that's that's probably why Mammoth gets so much snow. But yeah, I was hooked, and and then I met Matt, Matty Rowan, and started going out there with him, and started meeting people like TJ Dawood, and his brother Jared, and all those guys like Slammer and stuff out there, people that Matt had worked with, and kind of come up with out there. And I was still just a tourist and a guest, but starting to run cats, and this was years ago, but kept going, just loved that place. And a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I think, maybe Maddie probably had something to do with putting a little bug in TJ's ear about, getting some help. One spring, it was Super Park 21, and they had Super Park going. I think they had, like high performance camps as well. They still had all their parks firing, and they just needed some extra help. And so I got to go out and be a push bitch, for lack of a better word, and farm more snow than I've ever moved in my entire life for that jump and that hip that those boys built. And it was one of the coolest experiences. I mean, it just was eye opening, coming from a little tiny ski area with very, very little resources to some place that like basically seems like money is not an object. And through TJ's leadership, what we accomplished that spring was like just blew my mind. Like I had no idea what was possible with snowcats, and really until that spring.
Yeah, and I think that's what's cool with the visualization of what's possible. You know, if you have the opportunity and the dream to be able to get out there, then it's possible. Like nothing's not possible through whatever reach you have, through whatever person that you have contact with. There's always a conversation that can happen. So I just think it's cool that you drew from your time at Snowball and then realizing that you could expand upon that and then saying, "Hey, can I help?" And that's just from like an outsider looking in, and you kind of putting it all together there. And I never, oh man, I just think that's just incredible. The resources, like there was a connection there. Like you were there early, you went to Mammoth as a kid, going up there, pursuing that, doing that thing, and being with your family. I just think that's cool. And then being able to be there as an operator too, like being around people like TJ, being around people like Frank, Scott Cherry. Big shout out to Scott Cherry, by the way.
Yeah, Yamaguchi says, "What's up, Scott?"
Yeah, big shout out to Cherry. Cherry, get on the blade dive. Come on, man. Quit holding back.
The only reason I was able, like, I would say that I continue to go out there for the next 3 springs, and each year got to be more and more involved with like that process, and started actually getting to build features and work with the Unbound crew, like to help maintain their parks, and cover here and go there and pivot and do whatever those guys needed me to do to get the goal accomplished and whatever it was. But none of that would have been possible if it weren't for those relationships that I developed, like through Maddie and getting to know that crew, and then going out there and just trying to be, as open-minded and humble and willing to do whatever, just to be there. Like I didn't care what I was doing. I just wanted to be in a cat and, helping the project along. And it was all rewarding and fun. I mean, I'm pretty sure you farm snow at Mammoth. Like sometimes it seems like it's pretty bottomless, and it's a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, like I wouldn't have got to do any of that if it weren't for those people that I've gotten to know over the years, and who gave me that opportunity. And I really appreciated it because I learned a lot in those springs out there.
Yeah, man. Big shout out to Mammoth. Mammoth definitely has a lot of connections for a lot of people. I want to know real quick, too, like you developed a friendship with Chris Meyer, and along those years that you had out there, but maybe tell us about that friendship with Meyer.
Yeah, for sure. When I first met Chris, he was a Telluride park manager in Southwest Colorado, which is it's like 5.5 hours from Flagstaff. So it was kind of our go-to, like, bigger resort type mountain. Definitely one of the closer ones as far as Colorado goes. And we just sort of organically started following each other on social media, I think. And I was just blown away by what he was doing in Telluride, and for some reason he thought what I was doing in Arizona was cool. And I've always been, we always went out to Telluride. So one of those trips, I just hit him up and was like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Like, I'd love to hop in the cat with you. And we had talked a little dialogue back and forth via social media, but really hadn't gotten to know each other. And so I went out, rode in the cat with him, and I think I spent like a few hours. I had to get back to my girlfriend at the time, Jada, who's now my fiance. But yeah, I was just blown away at his perspective on the mountain, and like he immediately started talking to me about the way he sees the snow and his visions for like snow management and the way the machine works in harmony. And like I don't know, you have to talk to him about it. It's pretty deep, but I was like, wow, like this individual is way more than just a park builder. And I think Chris can be pretty misunderstood. He's kind of a quiet guy, but once you get him talking, he really has some pretty profound things to say. And so it kind of started from there. And I kept going out there. We started fishing in the summer, fly fishing together, which we both really loved doing. And he showed me his neck of the woods, and then he would come out and I'd show him Arizona and Snowball. And Chris actually got invited out for Super Park 21 and to help that spring as well. So we carpooled out there, and that's really when our friendship kind of really started to take off. A long car ride, you definitely get a lot of opportunity to have some meaningful conversations, and we definitely did. And I look up to that man. I love him. He's a good guy, and yeah, I'm stoked I've gotten to know him.
And speaking along the words or along the lines of growing, I have a special guest question from TJ Dawood himself.
No.
And I'm going to read it to you now. So shout out to TJ for contributing. And I really mean that, like massive shout out to TJ. He says, hey, Yosh. So I've always respected your decision to take a step back from management. What was the transition like initially? And did you second guess yourself then, and do you now?
Whoa, TJ, thanks for the question. Heavy, bud. Yeah, I think I've second guessed a lot of things that I've done in my life. But like I was saying before, like that decision to walk away from the program was pretty much necessary for my mental health and my personal satisfaction and just well-being in general. And I do second guess it. I like being a seasonal employee at 36, with a mortgage and getting married in October and a lot of bills, like that lack of stability definitely kind of makes me question some of the decisions I've made in recent years. But one thing I know for sure that has come out of that decision to step down is a complete um, change in my perspective on my life, like I was saying earlier, and what's important. So I don't regret it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm excited about it and scared at the same time, but I know that I've surrounded myself with incredible people and I know that I can get through it and that whatever I end up doing in the future will be great. And I'm excited about it for sure.
Do you, TJ also asks, do you miss being in a leadership role? And is focusing on building and operating enough to keep you interested and engaged?
No, it's not enough. I thought for the longest time when I was watching Maddie, get our 320 excavator out on the snow and get to build some really cool shapes and nerd out on that I was missing out on all that. And so that was definitely something that I thought was going to be a positive thing. Like, oh, I'm just going to build. I'm going to focus on this cat and trying to figure this thing out, which, I don't think I'll ever completely figure out because it's like one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I love it, but it's tough. And one thing I did realize, in the last couple of years of just running a cat is that I do miss like leading and developing people, or at least trying to do that. And I really like that opportunity again, for sure. But yeah, I guess I just didn't know, I didn't know what I wanted or what the grass is always greener on the other side thing. And once I was there, I was like, oh, well, that's not really what I wanted. But, that's life. And I don't regret it at all, like at all, one bit. If you could take me back to that furlough and I'd make the exact same decisions that I've made for sure. Because like I said, I'm just a much happier person and my life is in perspective now, whereas before it definitely was not.
Huge thank you to TJ Dawood for being
Yeah,
a part
absolutely.
of it. Hope you're well. Outside of the equipment operations piece of it, who is Joshua Heydorn? What defines you?
Yeah, I find that question to be pretty difficult. um, I'm for lack of a better word, a pretty sensitive guy. Kind of a wear your heart on your sleeve, emotional person. I always have been my whole life. I definitely, deal with my emotions a lot differently than I used to. I'm much more open and honest about them now, whereas I used to kind of just bottle that shit up and not talk about it and not show weakness and try to present strength and, I guess masculinity, that bullshit macho, crap that is pretty prevalent in our industry. And I think that comes maybe from maybe being raised, by a woman, like solely. I'm very close with my mother, and she's a really big part of who I am for sure, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. But I think that I'm more empathetic for it, and it definitely kind of drives my decision-making paradigm for sure on a daily basis, and sometimes, to a fault. But yeah, I think that's a good way to describe me.
I do have a special guest question from the man himself, Jim Master Chris Meyer, and I will play it for you right now.
Hey there, Blade Dive. Chris Meyer calling in from Mammoth Mountain. Question for my boy Yosh. I'd like to know, what is your favorite feature to build, to ride, and I want to know why. Thank you.
Nice. Shout out Chris Meyer. What's up? Thanks for the question, dude. Well, I love transition features. My head went to ride, right? And why? Yeah, I find them incredibly challenging to maintain. And I guess when I was coming up and growing up, skateboarding or trying to skateboard, I was a shit skateboarder. I got back into it a little bit in college. One of my roommates had a mini ramp, or I guess he was like my landlord, not really my roommate. But anyways, so I started skating, a tranny with elbow pads and knee pads and no, I don't think I had a helmet. It was a wood ramp, so I wasn't super worried about the coping. But yeah, I just really enjoy that sensation. And I never had a lot of experience getting to ride pipe, because we don't really have, Barrett has always had a pipe, but most of the mountains I've gone to in the West, either I've sensed this barrier of entry riding a pipe because they're pretty intimidating, or I didn't have access to one. So that kind of foray into the vert ramp in my landlord's backyard just made me love riding those kind of features. And then I basically have emulated people like Matt Rowan and Chris Meyer and others that I'm probably forgetting that do really amazing things with snowcats and building crazy training features like Holy Bully and things like that, which I've been lucky to be a part of. The last one that was at Mammoth, and that was so incredibly rewarding because it is so difficult. It is incredibly challenging, not only to visualize these shapes and the way a rider will flow through set of transition features, but the way you build them with a cat, and then again the way you maintain them is just the hardest thing. And because it's that difficult, it's been really, really rewarding. And it's something that we're able to do here in Arizona. We don't have a Zog to do proper transitions, but we find ourselves building a lot of transition features in our parks. And yeah, that's for the long answer to your question, Chris. There's kind of a corollary there too that I just kind of cycled back to on Tony's question, about that dynamic of day crew and the cat staff. And at least, on our hill with very limited resources, anytime we have features like that can be partially maintained by our day staff, we are so appreciative to them when they can help us kind of make our night a little more simple. And you look at an event like Holy Bully that's built by cats, but the fine details are shaped by hand and then maintained almost completely by hand. It is incredible. And when you can do that on a local, micro level, like at our resort, and work together with your day staff to accomplish those fun features that everyone likes to ride, but nobody likes to maintain, including the day staff. It's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, it's massively rewarding when you have everybody on board to achieve a bigger vision of what the guest offering will be. Yeah, that's it. Like that's the goal. I want to know who are some great examples of standout leaders, whether it's resort management, project management that you've been around. Um, who are some of those examples?
Oh man, there's such a long list of people that I've come across over the years. Stumble sent me to Cutter's Camp back in the day, a long time ago, for a couple of years, and that was fun. It was a good time. I think that's where you and I actually met
That is.
for the first time. Yeah, and I got to meet people like Elia Hamilton and Ken Gator and Jace Gambio, those East Coast boys, and Dan Nielsen and Ryan Wormsbecker, and those boys out in Bear. So many people that I've looked up to their programs and then met them face to face and went, aha, now I understand why these programs are so successful, because they have these individuals and teams, working behind the scenes that are just I don't know, the camaraderie amongst some of those guys. It was just wow, that's what we need. That's what we want here for sure. And so I'd say, and you said project management. I think, TJ is probably one of the best project managers that I've been around personally, with just the scale of things that I've seen him kind of orchestrate, or just mind-boggling to me. I would never be able to handle something like that, or maybe not, never. But to answer your question now, I think great leadership should be organized and articulate, and it should be supportive, empathetic, like we've been talking about, and not to go all mushy, but nurturing, in regards to the goals of the organization. So what I mean by that is, one thing I used to be bad at, and I feel like I'm better at now, is following up and coming back around and checking in, and like you were saying earlier, making sure people have what they need, and setting people up for success. And that takes a lot of work, a ton of work, and going that extra mile to kind of reach out to somebody, even if you don't want to or don't have the time to, it's definitely in your best interest as a leader to circle back with your crews and make sure that everybody's on the same page and you're all on the right track, and that people are stoked and having fun, because that's what we're in the business of doing, is creating fun and getting people outside.
I want to know what you think the future looks like for, you can go broad, you can go narrow, but the industry as a whole. What do you think it looks like, the future?
I'm hopeful that we're able to continue to have a ski season. I think I'm going to pivot kind of a different direction on this, and I've been spending a lot of time outdoors lately. A lot of hiking and a lot of, that's definitely a big part of who I am, is, getting out into nature and stuff. And I'm a little fearful, with climate change and how the industry is going to adapt to it. And especially areas more southern latitude, like here in Arizona. In the last 6 years, I think I've seen it rain more times than in a year than I saw all in the previous like 10 years of being here, at elevation. Like it'll be last January, I was at 11,000 feet in my cap and it was raining. And that was just like insane to me. I always thought that, our high elevation would like kind of shelter us from the effects of climate change until last year. And, snowmaking was always like in my mind, like, well, it's always going to be cold. We're high elevation. Like we're always going to be able to make snow. And that's just like not the case anymore at all. And at least, from my experience and from others that I've talked to about this issue. And so I'm hopeful that, the ski industry will be able to pivot. And I see that, summer tourism, becoming more part of ski areas like operations and revenue streams probably in the future, and skiing kind of becoming like secondary to operations, which doesn't even seem like mathematically possible with overheads and stuff that it takes to run a ski area. But I hope I'm wrong. I'm not incredibly optimistic about it. And I don't necessarily think in my lifetime, like kids that are coming up today aren't going to have the opportunities, that I had to like get in a snowcat and live this lifestyle. But I do fear for it, and I see the effects of it around me here in Arizona, and yeah, it's kind of worrisome. But the ski area as a whole, the ski industry, as a whole, like I see a lot of positive things. I think terrain parks are trending in weird ways, and I forget who mentioned it before. I think it was Frank, like just the pipes are kind of going away, and, really large park programs are kind of going away. And I think you mentioned Breck, so that whole evolution, is kind of sad to me in some respects, but also could be, a sign of the industry pivoting because of climate change, or maybe it's just revenue and, expenses. But yeah, it's really interesting. I'm not sure where it's going, but that's kind of what's exciting about it. I think if people, like yourself and a lot of the people we've mentioned on the podcast tonight continue to be involved, and others, coming up are passionate about it, like we'll be able to enjoy this industry for years to come, for sure. But it's definitely going to change, for sure.
Yeah, that's such a tough question to answer. And the future, it's bright. I feel like it's bright, but I'm hopeful with you, man. I'm right there with you. Josh, I want to take a minute and say thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to jump on the podcast with me and just share your story and laugh a little bit with me too. But it's been a pleasure catching up, chatting, and listening to you. So thank you for contributing. It means the world.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I'm stoked about what you're doing. And man, I wish that when I was lost and making it up as I went along there in the beginning of my career, that there was something called a podcast that I could maybe go and listen to some people that have made the same mistakes that I was about to make and maybe steer me in the right direction. Certainly, our friends and people that we know in the industry have helped guide us, but I think it's a really important thing that you're doing, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Huge thank you to Josh Heydorn for being on the Blade Dive today. Thank you for taking time again, sir, and I thoroughly enjoyed all the stories, especially the mustache. Ouch, dude. That had to have hurt, and I have heard rumors, so best practice, I'm not going there. If you were stoked on what you listened to and you're a fan of the podcast already but haven't subscribed, please make sure that you do. And I'll take a minute and let you know, too, that following us on social media is something that we would be stoked to have you do as well. You can find us at The Blade Dive on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and tag us in your photos. We got summer glaciers going on, there's dirt work, there's definitely winter in the southern hemisphere, so tag us in those photos. Also, too, remember to send in your push road questions of the day. I was super excited about the topic that Antoni was willing to discuss this evening. He brought that up, and so huge shout out to him for contributing. You can send us a message via an email at thebladedive.com or a direct message on social media. Okay, you know the deal. Don't be a dick. Fill your machine at the end of your shift, please.